By now it should be pretty obvious, but we are very verbal creatures and our dogs are not. They are mostly communicating with us via their body language. So today we're going to do just a really quick overview of a little bit of dog body language to give you a better understanding of what you're seeing from your dog. Welcome back. My name is Kristen from Salty Pack. So today is not a day that I'm giving you exercises or things like that to work on with your dog, but what I would like for you to get from this video is just a little bit more of an understanding of what you're seeing, which is going to help you manage some of your situations on a walk with your dog. So we're going to kind of start from like the tip of the dog and go to the tail of the dog, kind of going through a couple of different things that you may be seeing and breaking down what they could mean for that your dog is trying to communicate with you. So before we get started, it is super crucial to really point out every dog is super different. So when we see these videos online of look at this body language in one context can mean something really different in another context. So as I'm starting to go through some things, remember everything's really contextual. It can have many different meanings. So try and take a little bit of that nuanced approach and don't think that just because your dog has licked their lips means that they're nervous, right? And we'll kind of get into a little bit of that. But really, caveat to this whole thing, it must be really individually taken into consideration your dog's body language once we start applying all of these. So what we're trying to get from our dogs is the most relaxed sort of dog that we can get, right? I don't think anybody out there really wants their dog to be super, super overexcited, kind of hyper aroused almost. And I don't think that anybody on their walks really wants a very nervous dog either. So we'll kind of talk about the different ends of the spectrum of things and then hoping somewhere that we land in the middle. So starting at the tip of the dog where their nose and mouth is, we'll kind of focus on a little bit of what we want to see with that relaxed mouth. So a dog who is nice and relaxed is generally going to probably either have their mouth just slightly open, maybe a little bit more open if it's hot. It still could be closed, but just a little bit relaxed. Sort of tight-lipped, either super closed or really open and very almost tight in the mouth could mean a little bit of uncomfort on either end. So sometimes you'll see very unconfident dogs really stiff in the mouth and they're sort of hyper aware of everything. But I've also seen really unconfident dogs that are and they're almost just on edge about everything, but it looks like they've got this massive big smile. Now, again, caveat to this whole thing as well too. If you saw my dog Artie, for example, in the wintertime, he mostly actually has his mouth closed. He doesn't need to pant very much. He's generally, relatively, most times, pretty heat acclimated. Whereas in the summertime, it does affect him a little bit and he'll open his mouth. So for him, on either end of relaxed, we could be looking at two really different dogs. So again, this is another big caveat. Just make sure that you're paying attention to all these conditions and things. But generally, a nice relaxed dog when you go for a walk is going to kind of have that nice relaxed mouth to it. So sort of still around that mouth region, there's a couple of things just to kind of look out for that you may have heard of these signals as well too, like lip licking or yawning or random sniffing. Sometimes these can be a little bit of displacement behaviors. What that means is essentially when you have all of this energy that you're I have to take it out on something. So sometimes dogs will yawn, they'll lick their lips, or just randomly start to sniff things in sort of this all right, I gotta get out some of this energy. That could mean that they're very excited or they're very stressed. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. They're just yawning just for the sake of yawning, right? So again, just to give an example of my dog Artie, if you see him licking his lips when I have a ball on a string, it's probably not because he's necessarily stressed. He's probably just in very high anticipation of when I'm going to give him the release cue to go bite that ball on a string. So again, it's taking things into consideration. Not all lip licking or yawning is going to mean a stressed dog, but those are things to sort of look out for. Definitely, if you start to get a lot of really heavy yawns and it's almost like they shake their body afterwards, or really random displacement sniffing, or lots of lip licking included in a bunch of different behaviors, that can give us a little bit more of these bigger signs. But just a couple of things to look out for, sort of still in that mouth region. With the eyes, kind of in that same facial region as well too, The eyes we sort of want to be nice and relaxed, blinking. Of course, we've seen already that, when we've been talking about triggers, that hard staring, unblinking can be super rude for us as humans as well as dogs. So if we see those really hard stares, that's where we're trying to work on some of this stuff like the name game or redirection with that let's go back towards us. Trying to get your dog not to be so fixated because hard eye contact can lead to either fight, flight, or foe or friend. So sometimes that hard staring can lead into like, hey, you want to play? But sometimes it can be particularly on leash, it can be very conflicting for a lot of dogs to hold that. So it'd be the same thing of me unblinking as I'm staring at someone for a super long, like it gets pretty uncomfortable. It's the same thing here for dogs. So a nice relaxed dog is going to be like, cool, I can acknowledge that, we're still cruising, just a little bit more of that relaxed nature with their eyes. So with the ears, some dogs have like big sonar ears that are super easy to read. Other dogs have floppy ears, a little bit less, but you can still see some of the perkiness as well too. So we're just talking about some of the like musculature that comes into the ears. So most dogs who are super relaxed might have like a slightly forward or slightly backward kind of set ears. We don't want necessarily, again, that super sonar, super forward. That usually comes with some of that hard staring at, say, triggers, for example. It could be dogs that are a little bit more like alert and aware. They're kind of hyper conscious of things. And that's, again, a little bit of that unconfidence for some dogs, is they're just always scanning the environment. On the other side, we might get dogs that have super pinned back ears, which could be in a little bit of like sort of this fight or flight, more flighty with the ears pinned back, or overly appeasing. And again, these are not hard and fast rules. I have to just keep reiterating that. You have to read the whole thing, but this is some things that could be going on with those ears that you can start to pick up on as well. The overly appeasing stuff, we want to try and just get our dogs to be a little bit less like, oh, it's fine, nothing's gonna be wrong, and try and build up a little bit of confidence. So sometimes if you see those super far ears back because everything else is coming along with it, and they're really trying hard to go like, I'm really not a threat to you, that like as a side conversation, we want our dogs to be nice and confident. We actually don't want necessarily too much appeasing nature. Reason I say that is there is a lot of people when I come into initial consults going, oh, it's okay, my dog is like the super appeasing one. They roll over onto their backs and they're like super submissive and things. This can be fine for a lot of dogs, but not necessarily all dogs appreciate so much like, oh, like, what are you doing? So like with us, with our facial kind of expressions, we can go through a wide variety of different facial expressions. Same thing here for dogs. So most of what we kind of see with the changes of behavior for the attitude of the dog does happen sort of in that facial structure. So we kind of move into the rest of the body, and it's pretty easy to kind of see when your dog is super nice and relaxed. A lot of like golden retrievers, for example, have this like little hip sway that they kind of do, super relaxed, like nice and swooshy body. We kind of want that nice relaxed body when we go out for a walk. There are, though, some dogs like Kelpies, for example, that just have a little bit more of that stiffness, straightness to them, and that's just part of their gait, right? So again, lots and lots of individual variation. But we kind of want to see that nice, loose, relaxed body as much as we can. Sometimes that like really stiff, straight can be, again, sort of that over alertness towards a trigger, something in the environment. And sometimes dogs who give like a pulling back nature, of course, can show signs of like unconfident. The either end of the like over alertness, wanting to go towards or staying away, generally come with a lot of body stiffness. It's almost like they're bracing themselves for impact if something happens. Generally, people can kind of read this one pretty easily once you start to pay attention, like, oh, my dog is super relaxed, or wow, they're really stiff. It seems like something is coming up. And then kind of getting all the way back to the end of the dog, which is the tail. And the tail is one of the most like misunderstood of the dog's body language that people read, but also has one of the biggest variations as well too. So the biggest thing that I hear is when people have had dogs who are like super friendly, they've maybe like unfortunately been in a dog fight, the almost the first thing that they say to me is, we don't know where it came from. The tails were wagging. It felt like it came out of nowhere. So different tail wags can mean different things. Again, talking about sort of the ideal that we're looking for is a nice, like, think of a willy wagtail for anybody in Australia, sort of that like bobby little like tail that kind of wags around. Like it's almost like it's got a mind of its own. It's doing its own thing. It's super relaxed. Some dogs will just naturally have a little bit of a lower set tail. Totally fine as long as it's, again, sort of that super relaxed nature of the tail. Once we get into sort of that really high up tail or something that feels really stiff, this is where things can go either. Sort of like with that staring that we talked about, we could go into like fight, or we could go into like super fun friend mode. Same thing here with the tail. A lot of dogs, when they bring their tails up and when they're first meeting other dogs, if they're kind of confident but like a little just on edge, they're like, I don't really know what's going on, you'll notice that the tail is kind of like very stiff and kind of like wags in a very vibrating fashion rather than this like nice swooshy tail. Some dogs, okay, don't come at me. Some dogs will greet that way with that like very vibrating tail. Then after that, once kind of both dogs figure themselves out, they'll go, oh, you're super friend, and then it gets nice and relaxed. Or that's where sometimes it can turn into a fight, is like, hey, what's going on here? And it builds up this tension. So it just depends. So a wagging tail does not always mean a happy tail, just a little heads up. And again, every dog is gonna have a different tail wag. We're gonna have a very different looking tail wag from a pug that has a like spiral tail to, say, my Belgian Malinois that has a super high tail that kind of like flicks over into this kind of scorpion tail. So there's everything that's kind of in between there. So again, lots and lots of variation as well. With the tail tucked, again, there's a couple of different things that we can actually read. Yes, the majority of the time that you see a tail tucked is usually a dog that's very unconfident. It's kind of one of the easiest things for people to read. They're nervous or scared and they want to get out of a situation. But in just a second, I'll show you a very short clip of my dog Artie, again, with that big scorpion tail. When we do box work, which takes a lot of mental capacity, I'll put a link in the description if you want to know more about box work through Pat Stewart. But when Artie does box work, he actually tucks his tail almost so far under sometimes that the tip of his tail nearly touches his belly button on the other end, like coming up and through his legs. That's not necessarily nervousness. What that is showing me is ultra fixation and concentration. There's a lot of dogs that do nose work, for example, that actually tuck their tail. It's almost going like, hey, I'm not open for anybody. Like, I have a job to do. This is what I'm doing right now. So again, it's just taking into consideration how many different contexts there are. All right, let's see that video with Artie. So context matters when we look at dog body language. This is box feeding with my dog Artie. It's not necessarily super important to the whole conversation, but I'll link a video that you can watch by the amazing Pat Stewart, which is where I learned it from as well too. If you can notice, Artie's tail is tucked here. If we can take this out of context, we can probably say maybe he's fearful of the box, maybe he's uncertain, but what he's actually probably telling me more is that he's very concentrated. It's just one example of showing you that yes, his tail is tucked, but there is zero equipment on him. He can pull his head out of that box at any time. But he's actually really enjoying himself. What he's doing in here, just for context, is he's staring really hard at a arbitrary metal fixture. Nice. We can see that tail coming out in anticipation. Good. So think about all of those different contexts for when you are looking at dog behavior, because one picture might not tell the entire story. So the general consensus of dog body language is we want a bit of that relaxed, loose dog as much as we can from tip to tail. Sometimes for a lot of stiffness or forward, we could have some triggers that are coming up. That's things that we want to, again, see if we can go into that more relaxed dog. And some dogs who show that timidness or submissiveness, we actually want to bring them up in confidence. But again, there's so many varieties of different dog body language. These are just some examples that you might or might not notice with your particular dog. So in just a minute, you're gonna see an example with Raven, the German Shepherd. She gives really nice body language, like a lot of working dogs do. She'll show stiffness towards the magpie, so a really low level trigger for her, and then really nice swooshy body language as I'm able to get that name game and have her moving towards me. So you'll see really big kind of differences. Start to pay attention to that with your dog as you might start to like potentially go out and work around some low level triggers or distractors today. See if you can notice some of those small subtle changes so that if you go out and your dog has some bigger triggers, you can start to notice, I'm seeing those changes now. Now is a good time to re-engage with my dog. So for the exercise today, it doesn't have to be anything super formalized. You can do this in your backyard. You can go to a park if there's like, again, like a nice time for like birds, for example. That's a really easy one because you can kind of maintain some distance, for example. But even in your backyard, you can just get like a toy out or something. Be creative, set something up. I really just want you kind of paying attention to that body language of your dog and seeing if you can pick up on some of those small changes that happen as they start to approach that trigger or low level distractor or whatever you're using. So grab your dog, grab your phone for filming if you want to come like look back at it. If you've got any questions with your dog body language, always feel free to reach out and have some fun. All right, we'll see how this goes. We've got some magpies who I've fed. Raven. Yes. There we go, sweetie, I know. So we can even work around some triggers around the birds. Raven. Yes. So how this has looked, nice, is a bit of the name game and then a little bit of taps. Good, and then yes, and then move back with me. Nice job, girl. So what I kind of wanted to talk about was a little bit of body language. Raven kind of gives pretty clear body language. Right here, she's kind of fixating on all of these bush turkeys. I'm gonna let her go probably longer than I would like to. So ears kind of come forward, like lots of staring and fixating. Raven. Yes. Nice. So think of that as like a pretty easy way to recognize when she's building herself up, particularly around other dogs. Easy to work kind of around birds as well too. These are triggers. Raven. Yes. Nice. And so a good way to also build up a little bit of that name game stuff. Hello, magpies. Are you hungry? There you go. Please be my friend. There you go. Okay, so hopefully they'll stay away from us. So as she's passing by dogs and triggers and things, this is where I want you guys to focus on a little bit of that body language. You've probably recognized when she has those, Raven, good. When she has those moments of kind of building up, and sometimes it feels like it could be totally irrespective of the dog, like, oh, there's not really any rhyme or reason to it. But when she's like kind of staring, I'll even do it to the camera, if she's staring and locking and loading and fixating as you're moving, that of course, by the time that she's like just passing this dog, that's where the reaction could actually be coming from. So really the big thing here is breaking that staring and fixation can really, that's where we come back to the name game with the focus stuff, can really help to go like, hey, you don't need to worry about this trigger, just check back in with me, because I think at this stage, she still doesn't really know what to do alternatively. So she's like, the only thing that I can do is just see what this other dog is gonna do. And then if the other dog is kind of sketchy as well too, and it's like, well, I've gotta see what you're gonna do. And then they have a lot of this energy. That's where a lot of the reactions can kind of come from. So what I want you to notice with her for what we're kind of seeing before those reaction points are those ears are nice and kind of like they're flicked back at the moment. She's pretty relaxed, but when they kind of lock in forwards, particularly for like pointy ear dogs, you can kind of see it a little bit more often. So a little bit more forwards as she's kind of looking at that bird. Good girlie. So the ears kind of come forwards. The pacing, she's pretty like bouncy as she walks. When she kind of gets to this point of like, she's almost like stalking a little bit more, saving that energy and like really kind of like locking in. That's gonna be a change of behavior for her. The staring becomes really intense. So if you can, name game, and you can even start to add in, Raven. Yes, those little taps. so that she must check back in with you, because right now she's probably heard her name like that many times and is like, I don't really have to pay attention to you. Raven. Good job, girl. I know. So we're gonna see the ears come forward. We're gonna see that bouncing, like really happy pace, kind of come into a little bit more of that low stalk. We're gonna see the eyeing, the fixating, the like really staring. Even if we can't see your eyes, you can kind of tell that they're like very much attached onto the trigger. In this case, the magpies. I thought we might see a dog coming by, but dogs being another trigger for her as well too. And then for her, the heckles on her back. That could be excitement, or it could be a little bit of this like, everything's kind of tightening up for her. So noticing all of those changes in body language is gonna have you go, okay, cool, trigger. So first protocol, Raven. Yes, nice. That was a super girl. We didn't need any taps. So she missed out on the tap. She's gonna get a lot more of that jackpot from me. Nice, we've got 3. Oh, there's 4. Nice, good job, sweetie. Super girly, super girly. So we're gonna work on that name game engagement back with me, focus back with me, I should say, so that we can go like, hey, you don't need to worry about this trigger, just check back in with me. If we need to, we can give some more space and distance, particularly in this lovely area that we have here. Like at this stage, if she can't walk directly past the dog on the footpath, that's okay. Just pop onto the grass and just give a bit more space so that we set her up for success, and then we can get closer and closer. And it might depend on the other dog. The other dog might be super rude as well too, and she's like, no, I gotta watch out for this guy. So it's all these little things just to pay attention to with the reactions that she's having, and just like those minor little things to start to focus on. So we know super easy trigger for her that's a little bit more low level than dogs is birds. So we can practice walking by stuff that is maybe not the ultimate trigger, but we can practice some of our handling as well too in a lower trigger, which again, in this case, our lovely magpies who are helping us and not swooping today, which is fantastic. So we could even go, Raven, let's go. Good. So as she kind of stalks and loads and fixates on the birds, Raven, yes. Even as she looks away, I'm happy to reward that. She doesn't have to give me necessarily massive like focus. Good. Dog barking behind a fence. Good. Nice job, girly. Nope. Good. Birdie here. Good. Nice work, sweetie. If she doesn't pay too much attention, that's fine. Nice. Let's go. Good. Good job, sweetie. So now she's doing much better. Good. Raven. Yes. Clever girl. Nice. Let's go. So you guys can work on that for a little bit of mechanics more for you. Find a trigger that is lower level. Hold on. Good. Find a trigger that's more lower level for her than maybe her greatest trigger, and then see if you can work on your mechanics so that hopefully then by the time that you get to the ultimate trigger, you have that communication a little bit better with her and you know the signs to look out for. So watch out for those different signs, practice around low level triggers, and work your way up to the higher level triggers. She did really well. That was nice. See if we can pass by dogs later. All right, thank you for watching today's video. My name is Kristen from Salty Pack, and hopefully you enjoyed learning a little bit more about reading your dog and their body language and how you can help them to overcome some of their triggers in the future as we work through this challenge. Thank you again, and we'll see you tomorrow.